the companies that we see that usually that are wildly successful, they're they oftentimes share two components. One is they're mission-driven companies, and they look to hire missionaries, not mercenaries. And then the other component would be that they're patient-centric. They're empathic companies.
Hello and welcome once again to the Sustainable Healthcare Podcast. This is Joachim, founder of Green Innovation Group speaking. And I really look forward to this episode. Recorded it with Michael Moore from the United States, who has worked in the MedTech industry and for the many last years has been a recruiter for people in the MedTech space. So we're having a conversation of how has sustainability influenced the space, what is talent looking for in terms of sustainability, how much does sustainability mean in recruiting, and what can teams and companies do to attract the best talent. It was a joy talking with him. Hope you will enjoy the episode. So Michael, welcome to the Sustainable Healthcare Podcast. Super good to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate the invite and was looking forward to our discussion.
Yeah, definitely. So a little bit of background here at the Sustainability Healthcare Podcast. We talk about everything related to sustainability in the healthcare industry. And today we are going to dive into how that relates to talent and recruiting of talent for especially MedTech companies. And also how the commercial side of things are changing. Because at the end of the day, that's what drives so much change and decides what gets done and what gets shut down is that what kind of products actually leave across the desk to help the patients that are out there. So I'm really excited about that. And it's a different kind of episode, which I really appreciate. But Michael, why don't you start us out with your journey into this world? You have a lot of experience in the MedTech industry and in executive search. How did it all begin for you, and what drove you into the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Every year that ticks by, I look back and just am amazed how quick it all went by. But yeah, no, I was one of the I guess, in order to really give you the full picture, I'd have to take you back to, when I graduated from college. I went directly from undergrad into MBA school, which is an atypical path. Usually people have a couple years experience in industry before they go get their MBA, but I went directly from undergrad to MBA. And in the summer in between those two programs, I worked with a family friend who owned a executive search firm that was focused. He was an ex-president at Xerox, and they were focused in kind of middle market companies, 50 to 500 million industrial manufacturing type companies. And the business just fascinated me. I was just, I was enamored by the fact that they paid you for who you knew, not what you knew. But anyways, I worked that summer for him, and then I went and got my MBA. When I graduated, I went back to him and said, "Hey, I'm interested in coming to work with you." And he said, "Yeah, there's always a place for you here, but I recommend you go get some Fortune 500 sales experience, and that will serve you well in your career regardless of what you get into." So I did. Interviewed with J&J through a headhunter, and actually it was interesting because at the time I think I was asking him more questions about his job than the job I was interviewing for, but ended up getting the job and was there. Enjoyed a tremendous amount of success there for about 5 years. Was considering going into recruiting at that point, but felt like I still had a little bit of an itch to scratch there at on the commercial side in healthcare and in device. And so I ended up taking a job with the vascular division of Medtronic, the coronary division, and was there about a year, and I just, kind of in the back of my mind, I just knew that that wasn't what I was going to be doing for the rest of my life. And I really just, kind of had this recruiting thing in the back of my mind. I was young. I figured if there was ever a time to take a chance and try to build something on my own, that was probably a good time to do it. No better time than the present. So I did. I resigned and bought a laptop, some contact management software, and started working out of the garage. Initially we were doing a lot of work with some of the bigger companies, Boston, Medtronic, J&J, Abbott, et cetera. Initially we're really more focused in the commercial channels of executive search. We got bit by the startup bug pretty early on. We did a lot of work with a company called Fox Hollow Technologies, which had just an incredible trajectory. And really, just for me personally, I think at that moment, that was when I kind of found my thing. The startups it was just really fun to work building these small companies from the inside out, and really having an opportunity to make an impact on the overall trajectory of the company. And also, at the same time, helping people, take the next step in their career. So we from that point on, we really heavily focused on the early stage companies within MedTech. I guess you could consider it legacy analog medical devices, because that's all there was at the time. And then about 5 years ago, I wrote about this on LinkedIn the other day. I remember there was I'll never forget, I was at a birthday party for one of my oldest son's friends, and there wasn't much to do at the birthday party for the adults, as there often isn't. And so I pulled my phone up and was just going to get caught up on some industry reading. And I remember reading an article that stated that for the first time ever, AI had really been a practical application for AI had been found in healthcare. There was a platform that had been proven to be 30% more effective at diagnosing melanoma than a board-certified dermatologist. And that was the aha moment. I remember just at that moment thinking, this is it. This is the tipping point. There's no more putting the toothpaste back in the tube. This business is going to go in this direction, and there's not really anything that can stop it. My interest in MedTech was significant, but I've always had, I'm not very good with technology in the micro sense of applying it, like I can't even set the time on my VCR, and I use that term VCR intentionally, because I'm seemingly always behind the times from a technology implementation standpoint, but I do understand it very well at a 50,000 foot perspective. And have always had an interest in it. I graduated college in the .com era. All my classmates and friends went up and did the .com thing. I chose this stodgy healthcare business for no other reason other than I liked it. But I guess I probably had a little career envy because their careers just seemed to be always so interesting and whatnot, so cutting edge. And so when I saw these 5 years ago, when I saw these two titan industries of MedTech and technology, there was going to be a collision of the two. And I wanted to really sit at the intersection of that. And so from that point on, we really, really heavily indexed our forward-looking efforts in terms of clients on the digital health side of things. Do we still work with legacy analog medical device clients? Yes, but of the startups in MedTech that are in existence today, 70% of them have a digital component to the product. So one of those two markets is eating the other. It's cannibalizing the other. It could be argued which is which, but so that's kind of here we are 18 plus years later, and we work, across, all the different functions within executive search, from engineering to, clinical, reg, commercial, and, work at really every level, C-suite board seats down to individual contributors. So that's a little bit of my background.
Very cool, Michael. And yeah, so much has changed in those years. In executive search, of course, the competencies are key, of course, as well as other things. And for instance, one of the things that we're seeing with sustainability becoming ever more important is that the skill sets that are needed in a lot of positions are changing. Even if you're a sales representative at the front line, you might need some basic sustainability literacy, not to be the expert, but to be able to have the conversation at a first level and know who to ask for more. And also stuff like empathy, just as sustainability, one of the things it results in is that solutions become much more holistic as we are going into the circular economy. So the ability to put yourself in another person's place becomes ever more important, because in a circular economy, the system is only as strong as the weakest link. How you've been doing this for 18 years? That's a long time. There's been a lot of change from basically no internet to, like you said, digital being integral. Could you share some of your thoughts on the change in required skill set and competencies in the MedTech industry from your point of view?
Yeah, it's definitely you bring up the words, you brought up the word empathy, and that's a word that we hear tossed around quite a bit as of late in the industry. And I think the companies that we see and again, we're pretty focused on the startup side of things, but the companies that we see that usually that are wildly successful, they oftentimes share two components. One is they're mission-driven companies, and they look to hire missionaries, not mercenaries. And then the other component would be that they're patient-centric. They're empathic companies that, yes, they're not a charity. They're not a not-for-profit, but they are in the business of making money, as they should be. But that is done through a mission-driven, patient-centric approach that's really driven from the top. That's usually, that's part of the culture that's really established by the CEO or the founders of the company, and that gets illustrated and modeled from the top down. And so I think as a result of that, yeah, companies are now looking for a different type of individual, maybe a more empathic individual, a more emotionally intelligent individual, somebody that who, yes, you want your salespeople to be money motivated, but the second that there's a hiccup in compensation, or something like COVID happens, as I like to say, the second that the boat starts taking on a little water, and compensation's impacted negatively, the people that are just compensation driven are the ones that are going to be the first rats jumping off the ship when it starts taking on a little water. And so as a result of that, I think companies are starting to understand that if they can find people that are viscerally invested in the mission of the company, that and are empathic to the patients and want to serve those patients and want to serve those healthcare providers, that's probably a more sustainable model and probably a more predictable model than just having to ensure that your employees are going to make a ton of money each year.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and I'm definitely seeing that as well. Of course, might being biased, but a lot of the work people I work with are obviously excited about sustainability and are very mission driven. But from my point of view, it's clear as well that there's simply a large and very attractive part of the talent mass that you just don't have access to if you're not a mission driven company. Like, you cannot pay them enough to work with you if they are not aligned with your mission. And so how do you
and
how
oh,
do
by the
you,
way, those people
yeah.
are oftentimes the top, 5%. Those are the people that, the people that are mission driven and are patient centric and are not just concerned with the dollars and cents. Those are the people that are usually going to bring the greatest value to your organization. Those are the people that you want. Those are the force multipliers. Force multipliers, that's a military term for individuals that can, make a disproportionate amount of impact, 5x, 10x, whatever it is. And those are the types of individuals that are usually thinking at that higher level and are thinking just beyond much beyond compensation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I mean, they're usually quite well compensated anyway, and they have options. And when you
That's
have
right.
options and you have not just your basic needs, but more than your basic needs met, you want to have meaning and basically feel like your life makes a difference, right? So how do you get these mission driven individuals who can become force multipliers? Because that's your job at the end of the day, right? Of course, to help make the individual higher, but I assume you're also having conversations with the companies that you advise on. So how do we communicate what we do? How do we sharpen that mission? And how do we make that contact so it's attractive for these mission driven people?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. First and foremost, you can't just have you can't just have a mission statement and believe you've got a mission. If you can't have a mission without a culture, and so that takes time to develop. And that's something that has to really be. You can't fake it, and you can't build it overnight. That's something that startup founders and CEOs, those are the very first things you should be thinking about when you're filing your articles of incorporation, really, and figuring out, what really you want to accomplish and what fashion in which you want to accomplish it in. It's not just what you want to do, but how do you want to do it and why? And to be able to explain the why to a prospective employee that's got a lot of options, that's really good and has a lot of options, take that why and extrapolate it out along many different, from many different perspectives, not just, here's what we're going to go do and why we're going to do it, but what does that translate into for the employee? Why should, one of the questions I always love to ask when we do an intake call, when we're taking a new requisition from a client is, why should a force multiplier be interested in coming to work here? If they can't answer that question, then we've probably got some work to do before we take that job to the market and start marketing it to prospective candidates. And so, what's my old boss at J&J that hired me into the business, guy by the name of Lloyd Lowry. He was like a godfather in the business to so many of us. But, he used to say, "Whiff'em, what's in it for me?" Right? Like, what's in it for the candidate? What is that candidate going to gain? Who can they become if they go to work for this company versus where they're not at currently, and where or what their other options may be in the marketplace? And so that's usually, and then I also think if I was an employee, if I was a candidate in today's market, I think one or two of the things that I would want to know if I was interviewing for a company is, what are the top 3 problems you're going to need me to solve? You know, if a company says, here's 10 problems you need to fix, nobody can focus on 10 things, right? You know, but you know, when we get started, what are the top 3 things you're going to want me to focus on, and really be able to communicate that to candidates. The reason, if I was a candidate, that I would ask that question is do they understand their business? Do they understand where the do they have a product market fit? Do they have messaging already created for this product? Where are their pain points? And are they pragmatic? You know, are those 3 problems? Pragmatic is a word that is too far seldom used in our business. You know, there's a lot of people that aren't pragmatic in our business. And if I'm a candidate, I want to know, are these people pragmatic in their approach to the business and the expectations that they have of this individual? I'll give you a statistic. 75% of revenue heads at startup companies in MedTech don't last beyond 18 months.
Wow.
And it can't be that 75% of revenue head candidates of choice, meaning people that get selected, aren't qualified or didn't do a good job.
No, that's too high number. Yeah.
So it tells you that either the company hasn't done the work that they should have done before they hired a revenue head, or they had unrealistic expectations.
It's so funny to hear you say those things, because it reflects a lot of the learnings that we have from doing change management projects with our clients. So we're doing a lot of work on helping the large MedTech companies and pharma companies of how do we go from something that's a goal and maybe a high level strategy into actually getting there, what needs to get done. And like you said, a lot of it starts at translating that why to you have an overall sustainability strategy for all of J&J. But I mean, you can't use that in a business division, let alone at a team, at an individual level. At the end of the day,
That's right.
you need to be able to answer that, to what does this mean for me? And I think I don't know if we would agree to this, but coming back to the mission-driven people, what's in it for me now is it's very easy to hear that and think, okay, we're talking about conversation, what in me. But what's in it for me is a lot of the time nowadays, the way I see it, also about mandate, responsibility, and potential impact. Also coming back to what you said, that all right, if these are the problems that I need to solve, are you going to support me with the mandate I need? Do I get the resources and the support and backup to actually go out there and do it and get it done? That's also a big part of what's in it for me.
100%. Yep. And you know, think of it this way: the people that companies really want, the force multipliers, the people that can really have a disproportionate impact on the company, those are the people that have the luxury to ask those questions. You know, if the underperformers don't, because they've underperformed, they don't have the luxury of picking and choosing and from a litany of different options. They've really got to perform, or they kind of have to take what they can get from the market, versus the really impactful people. They get to ask those really hard questions and have those difficult conversations on the front end to make sure that they're setting themselves up for continued success.
I know we have quite a few listeners out there who are expanding their teams, because sustainability is really a rising topic. So there's a lot of new positions being created. There's a lot of teams that are maybe 1 FTE, but should be 10 or
Right.
approaching 10. And also a lot of new roles where often maybe they aren't quite sure what actually needs to get done, or they're treading new land, or there's there's quite a bit of unknowns as well. This is not sales rep number 1250 where they have a complete playbook. So I'm just thinking you probably have some learnings from the startup environment that might be interesting there. So are there some tips you can give? What are the key principles you think about when helping craft new roles, and maybe especially on certain roles and teams that are going from very few to more people relatively fast?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely have a lot of perspective on that, because that's in essence what we do, and our market has been so drastically impacted over the last 4 or 5 years because there's this intersection of healthcare and technology, and it's all blue ocean and it's uncharted waters, because usually you have technology people and then you have healthcare people. The technology people understand the tech, the healthcare people understand the delivery networks, but they don't understand the tech, and vice versa. The tech people don't understand the delivery networks in healthcare. And so you have very few people in the market that actually have both. And those people are tremendously valuable. But the challenge is to figure out, I guess the challenge for CEOs and C-suite and founders in these digital health markets, the challenge is really to figure out what you know, but more importantly, what you don't know, and then to be able to, augment your knowledge and skill sets with complementary people on your team that will be able to really fill in the gaps nicely. And as a result of that, if you build the right leadership team, then it really, everything kind of, everything filters down from there, right? As companies are, building, the leadership team under the C-suite's building their leadership team underneath them, or the individual contributor roles out, then you start to look at what are the, go back to, really what is it that we need this person to accomplish, and also equally, if not more important, is what is the skill sets that we really need to be able to do that, and does that look much differently than it did 5 years ago? The skill sets that are, for a commercial leader today are drastically different than what they were in digital health, than what they were in a legacy analog medical device environment 5-10 years ago. Medical devices used to be, you create something, you manufacture it, and you sell it. And it was like you box it up and you sell it. Here's the device. It was very uniform process, and it was a very much a standalone process. Now in this world of digital health, very few products are standalone. Most of the time, they require one, if not many, different partnerships, whether that is, okay, we're going to create this product, but we're going to need these 3 software programs that are external to our organization to be able to for the customer. They're going to have access to these types of products to be able to utilize our technology in their environment, or maybe there's other hardware systems that will have to be utilized in order for them to utilize our software program, for example. So, a leader in today's environment not only, doesn't just have to know how to, again, create, make, or manufacture and sell that product. They have to know, what partnerships to build. Sometimes those partnerships are just as important as the core technology you're building. If you select the wrong partners, that you could have a great product, but if the partners aren't, the right partners for that product or service, you're not going to have the success that you want. And so it's really thinking through, you know, what is it that we need this person to accomplish, and what are the skill sets that we think they really need, you know, to be able to do that. And being open, probably the most important thing is being open to the fact that that person probably looks much different than what they would have looked like 5-10 years ago if you were hiring for that role.
Yeah.
The profiles and the skills and experience needed for today's roles across the board is radically different.
It's very interesting to hear you say that. It reflects a lot of what we see in sustainability as well, that you come from having the sustainability roles that have been there in the large companies have been either three scenarios basically. One, it's been rooted in communication, and it's been in comms, and it's just been, you know, relatively high level, quite superficial, or it's been environmental health and safety. That was always 80% health and safety. Let's not have people get hurt. Or it was regulatory compliance. And all of these were, especially environmental health and safety and compliance, were very specialized roles with a deep root knowledge. And a lot of what's needed now out there in sustainability, and it reflects what you say about digital as well, is that you need someone who's able to look at different arenas and combine skill sets, and who's probably often not the expert, but knows where to find that expert, internal or external, and combine that knowledge to change processes and to get things done. And that's a lot more muddy and harder to pin down to a specific person. Like, right, we need someone who can somehow get this done, who has to be strong in 3 to 5 of these things.
100%.
Harder.
Yeah, no, it is. You know, it's the profiles are much less traditional in today's environment, and oftentimes they're somewhat subjective. You know, you're looking, you know, it's a moving target at times. You know, if they have X, Y, and Z, then they don't need A, B, and C. But if they don't have X, Y, and Z, then they need E, D, and F. You know, and so it's like it's an if and or statement versus, you know, like a bullet point. Here's the 6 things that they have to have.
The equation is complex, and I mean,
it is.
In a situation like that, what you really need is learners, because
100%.
From what you're saying, that things are a lot different now than what they were 5 years ago. I think that a mistake is that some people make is that, all right, things have changed. Now this is what the world looks like, but so this is what I need. But change is not a destination. It's not like now we're here. There's a process that's going to change. So you don't need someone to bring you on where you are today. You need someone who can keep up and actually move beyond the change. So you're at the forefront. And that's
100%. It's a dynamic environment for sure.
Definitely.
It's dynamic.
Learning?
You know, and I don't think it's you know, I don't know that it's so much. I think it's learning, but I think I would express it in a different way. I think if I don't know if I'm phrasing this properly, but I think it's more curious. You have to have people that are very, very curious, people that are problem solvers, that people that, you know, are, you know, embrace change and are impassioned around solving really complex problems. Those are the people that tend to be the most impactful in organizations. They're the people that, you know, find a way to work with others, you know, even others that they don't necessarily like. They find a way to work well with them because their curiosity around solving this problem is so strong that everything else is secondary to that. And that goes back to, again, hiring missionaries, not mercenaries, right? People that are mission driven, that are like, this is the problem. We're going to be singularly focused on this problem and until we fix it. And when we do, these are the why is these are the, the 6 different impacts it's going to have on this marketplace. And so people that are just constantly curious about that, people that are constantly wondering, asking why. My wife always, it drives her nuts because she's like, you ask a million questions, and I'm just constantly curious. I'm I'm always wanting to know why that's that way, and could it be done differently? And I think that's kind of that to me is probably the thing that I hear from leaders most cross-functionally that they're looking for is very curious people.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way to put it. So Michael, we are approaching wrap up time. So if you had to give three key takeaways for our listeners on how to recruit these mission driven people or force multipliers for new times, what would that be? So shot from the hip.
Yeah, I think I think the first thing is the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior.
Okay.
And so really, identifying people that have a track record of being great in everything they've been involved in. If maybe they were in Boy Scouts, but if they were they an Eagle Scout, did they see that through to fruition? Were they a collegiate athlete and, really had a strong understanding at an early point in time of what it means to be dedicated to your craft and to be and whatnot. Or maybe it was they were in the military and they made great sacrifice through that. I think that's probably, the first thing is really digging into, people's pasts and had they just been are they one of those people that have just been successful at everything they've done? Because that's going to probably perpetuate. I think, I think in terms of what the company can do to, really, move their talent access initiatives forward is I'll go back to just, really building that corporate culture, building that environment of, around a mission and being really patient centric. Employees, when I shared with a company that it's a mission driven, patient centric culture, I can hear the candidate smiling on the other end of the phone. That's what really, what really carries the day or moves the needle for candidates. And third, I think this is going to sound a little bit like time and materials type answer, but really having a really well-crafted, deliberate, intentional sales process or interview process, and being able to execute that process in less than 15 working days. The market is really hot. Yeah. Talent is not lasting on the market long. So really knowing who does this person need to touch in the interview process, being very intentional about what that person is interviewing the candidate for, what are they trying to accomplish in that interview, and having, prompt and thorough feedback. Because, if you interview 6 people for a role, 5 aren't going to get it, but they're going to go out there and they're going to espouse the opinion they have of the company and the experience that they had with that interview process. And the companies that treat candidates well in the interview process, recruiting gets easier and easier and easier because that word spreads and people want to work for organizations like that. The last statement I would say is the candidate and the company both give you a window into who they are in the interview process. And both are watching. I always say candidates are never going to be better at any given point in time in their employment than they were in the interview process. That's the best that they're going to give you. But conversely, the company is seemingly trying to put their best foot forward in the interview process. And so, if there's red or yellow flags at any point in that process for the candidate, that's information, and it's valuable information that candidates should be paying attention to and not turning a blind eye to.
Yeah, thank you. That was a super helpful sum up. There's a lot of people recruiting out there. Wow, this was really insightful, Michael. And thank you so much for coming here and your great energy. You're a very concise communicator, so I really appreciate that.
No, I appreciate the invite. It turns out, I guess I knew more about green initiatives and sustainability than I thought.
Thanks for listening. This is Joachim back here. As always, if you enjoyed what you heard, please share it with a friend, a colleague, or someone from your family. We welcome all listeners at the Sustainable Healthcare Podcast.